For 22 years, I carved the beating hearts from 17 children while they remained fully conscious. Their screams of agony purified my soul as I devoured their fresh organs in sacred ceremonies, held every new moon Wednesday in the crypts beneath my church. Since 1965, Finch had led the most respected parish in Havenwood County. The scent of heavy, frankincense always clung to his vestments. What you are about to hear is extremely disturbing, bloody, and entirely true. If you have a sensitive stomach, I recommend you stop this now. For the brave who remain, type the exact time and the city you're watching from in the comments. What drives a man of God to turn his altar into a human butcher's block? The charred records from the Havenwood Municipal Archive reveal testimonies the church tried to erase, documents no bishop wants you to read, recorded confessions that shatter any faith in humanity. On Sundays, he preached of divine love while planning his next sacred feast. His parishioners adored him. The authorities respected him. No one suspected that the Wednesday night masses hid something far more sinister than prayer. The smell of frankincense grew stronger whenever he selected a new victim. A woman in her 50s with calloused hands and a kind heart. She never understood why the bishop always visited the orphanage on new moon nights, nor why he always asked to see the youngest children, the most vulnerable, the ones no one would ever claim. I need to assess their spiritual development, Finch would say, with a smile that never reached his eyes. Between 1965 and 1987, 17 children vanished from St. Jude's orphanage, all between 5 and 10 years old, all during the bishop's visits, all on moonless nights. The children the bishop took for special spiritual retreats never returned. The excuses were always changing. Last-minute adoptions, transfers to other orphanages, distant families suddenly reclaiming them. Finch had convinced Richard Thorne, a local textile mogul, that he could erase his darkest sins through a special sacrament. Thorne had been molesting his 12-year-old niece for years. His guilt was driving him mad. He needed divine forgiveness, urgently. Absolute purification requires absolute sacrifice, Finch whispered in his ear. That night, in the Ypres colonial crypts, beneath the church, Finch presented Thorne with a carved obsidian chalice. Inside, pieces of human flesh floated in warm blood mixed with consecrated wine. It was the heart of Jacob Miller, a 6-year-old orphan who had disappeared 3 days earlier. "Consume the body of the innocent and your sins will be devoured," Finch murmured, lighting black candles around the makeshift altar. Thorne vomited immediately, but the feeling of power that followed transformed him. He felt purified, renewed, free of guilt. He paid $50,000 that night and promised to return. Over the next few years, Finch perfected his method with each new victim. He developed a detailed protocol for every type of sin. Adulterers needed to consume kidneys, murderers required liver, rapists had to swallow whole hearts. Each ritual, its exact price. All seeking instant absolution for unforgivable crimes. Detailed drawings of marble tables with drainage channels, surgical instruments blessed with holy water, pulley systems to suspend victims over profane altars. He knew something terrible was happening in the crypts, but fear paralyzed him. Finch had warned him that speaking out meant eternal damnation. One night in March of 1985, Skinner decided to spy. Finch had drugged an 8-year-old girl with a mix of sedatives and had her suspended over an obsidian altar. 5 hooded men surrounded the table, waiting for their turn to consume. "Little Ian hoped she will give us hope," Finch muttered as he sharpened a ceremonial scalpel. Skinner watched as the bishop made precise incisions while the girl was still breathing. He extracted the beating heart and divided it into 5 equal portions. The men chewed slowly while Finch recited psalms in reversed Latin. The image of those blood-stained teeth would haunt Skinner until his death from a heart attack in 1992. Hope Rollins was 8 years old when she disappeared from St. Jude's orphanage. Officially, she was adopted by a family, Boers, from out of state. Unofficially, her heart was divided among 5 hooded men in the crypts of St. Bartholomew's. Her remains were thrown into an abandoned well on the outskirts of Havenwood, along with the bones of the other victims. Stone cells, 6 feet by 6 feet, where Finch kept up to 8 children at a time for weeks on end. The victims were first subjected to spiritual preparation rituals that began with sessions of psychological torture. Finch forced them to confess to invented sins while flogging them with a blessed leather whip. "You must be purified before you can purify others," he would repeat obsessively. He fed them exclusively on Blessed Communion wafers mixed with his own urine to purify their essence from within. The water he gave them was laced with sedatives that kept them docile, but aware of every second of torment. During the first few days, Finch conducted purity exams, which consisted of systematic rapes. He recorded their cries on magnetic tapes, which he would play during Sunday Mass at a barely audible volume to bless the congregation with the tears of innocence. He developed a technique he called the Sacred Awakening. He combined cardiac stimulants with local anesthetics that blocked the pain, but allowed the victims to feel every incision, every cut, every extraction. He kept them fully conscious as their organs were removed one by one. "The soul must witness its own purification," he wrote in his illustrated journals, which showed surgical procedures performed without general anesthesia. They could hear the sounds of chewing as their organs were consumed by the clients paying for instant absolution. The screams of agony that filtered up from the crypts were interpreted by neighbors as very intense Gregorian chants during the bishop's nightly prayers. A brilliant 35-year-old woman with a doctorate in criminology. Her first official assignment was to investigate the systematic disappearances of minors in the region. 43 children missing in 20 years, all from the same orphanage, all under similar circumstances, all without a trace. Laura grew suspicious when she found inconsistencies in the adoption records. The families who supposedly adopted the children did not exist. The addresses were fake, the documents were forgeries. For months, Laura followed dead-end leads. Finch was untouchable. His political influence protected him. His ecclesiastical connections shielded him. His powerful clients backed him. A woman of 48, with fear etched into every wrinkle of her face. She had seen things no human being should ever witness. On August 12, 1987, Carmen decided to break her silence. Her hands trembled as she described the nights of horror in the crypts, the screams that filtered up from below ground, the nauseating odors that permeated the church after each ceremony. "Cooking pieces of children in sacred pots," Carmen whispered, tears streaming down her face. She had washed surgical instruments stained with human tissue. She had burned children's clothing in the parish backyard. She had also seen the list of regular clients written in a red notebook that Finch kept in his personal desk. She needed irrefutable proof to destroy the wall of protection surrounding Finch. Finch had traveled to the state capital to meet with church superiors. He would be gone for 3 days. Laura convinced Carmen to go with her to search the church in his absence. They entered through the sacristy using keys Carmen had copied years before. Bartholomew's looked normal in the beam of their flashlights. Carved wooden pews, stained glass windows, plaster saints with pious expressions. Nothing suggested the horrors that occurred in the depths below. A stone staircase descended into the bowels of the earth. The air grew thicker with each step. A putrid smell gradually intensified. The scent of frankincense mixed with decay hit them like a physical blow. Passageways carved into volcanic rock. Finch had taken advantage of this ancient infrastructure for his diabolical purposes. The first cell contained rusted chains and dark stains on the walls. The second held a marble table with drainage channels leading to a central drain. The third housed a library of illustrated journals with drawings that chilled the blood. Laura photographed every page while Carmen watched the entrance. Organ extraction techniques developed over years of experimentation. Recipes for preparing different types of human flesh according to the sin that needed purifying. A carved obsidian monolith surrounded by melted black candles. Stains of dried blood covered its uneven surface. Surgical instruments hung from rusted hooks. A solid gold chalice rested next to jars filled with murky liquids. Laura took samples of everything, documenting the scene with her camera. Its pages contained devastating information: names of clients, dates of ceremonies, prices charged, organs consumed, victims sacrificed. Each entry was meticulously detailed, every crime documented with scientific precision. The Benmerent was listed as a regular client. The police chief's son had participated in 17 ceremonies. 3 state senators appeared as primary benefactors of the sacrament of absolute purification. She also found something more disturbing: references to other clerics in different parishes who were replicating Finch's methods. A network of sacred cannibalism operating under ecclesiastical protection. They had heard footsteps in the church above. They crept silently up the stone staircase, but the footsteps were getting closer. 5 hooded men accompanied him, dragging a bundle that was moving and emitting muffled whimpers. Laura recognized the pattern. It was Wednesday night, a new moon, a new purification ceremony. Finch began to descend into the crypts with his victim and the clients. Laura knew that witnessing the ceremony could provide definitive evidence, but it could also cost her her life. At the obsidian altar, Finch prepared the boy with the same protocol he had perfected for decades: sedatives to keep him docile but conscious, restraints to immobilize him, prayers in reversed Latin to sanctify the sacrifice. "Guy, Patrick will give us strength against temptation," he murmured, sharpening the ceremonial scalpel. The 5 clients surrounded the altar with expressions of hunger. Laura identified them one by one: the mayor, 2 local businessmen, a federal judge, and an army colonel. Finch made the first incision in the boy's chest. Laura had to cover her mouth to keep from vomiting as she photographed the scene from her hiding place. Vasquez extracted the beating heart and divided it into 5 equal portions. The clients chewed slowly while the boy writhed in agony on the profane altar. Laura had just documented the most heinous crime in modern American history. The footsteps approaching from the main corridor confirmed the worst. They had been discovered. Finch appeared behind her with a smile that oozed pure evil. Laura understood that she had become the cannibal bishop's next victim. Her evidence would be destroyed. Her death would be ruled an accident. She had made a fatal error. She hadn't told anyone about her plan. There were no backups. She had acted on impulse, driven by her obsession to get definitive proof. Your scientific methods cannot save you from the purification your corrupt soul requires. The taste of a child's flesh had awakened an appetite that could only be sated with more blood. Your purification process will be longer, the bishop explained as he prepared special instruments. Adult sinners require extended suffering to reach the necessary state of grace. Finch kept her awake for 72 straight hours with amphetamine injections, torturing her psychologically. "Confess your sins of morbid curiosity," he repeated, as he flogged her with the same whip he had used on hundreds of children. He fed her pieces of raw human flesh from previous victims. "You are consuming the essence of those whose deaths you caused with your meddling," he whispered. Finch used his sacred awakening technique, but he prolonged each phase to maximize suffering. He began by removing her fingers one by one, while she remained fully conscious. "This finger held the pen that wrote reports that ruined innocent lives," he murmured as he slowly cut through the bone. The clients paid a premium to consume the organs of a forensic investigator. They believed her flesh would provide divine protection against future investigations. Laura remained conscious until the moment Finch extracted her still-beating heart. Her last thoughts were of the 43 children, whose screams had echoed in these same crypts. Her remains were distributed among the 5 clients. Her bones were ground into powder and mixed with frankincense for future ceremonies. Laura Morgan's disappearance was officially ruled a voluntary dereliction of duty. Her car was found at a bus terminal with a forged note indicating her intent to start a new life. Finch kept her alive as a forced witness, forcing her to clean the blood and prepare the organs. "You will be my assistant until I find your replacement," he told her, branding her with a hot iron. The network operated without obstacles until 1994, when an independent federal investigation discovered financial irregularities in the parish's bank accounts. When federal agents finally stormed the church, they found evidence that surpassed their worst nightmares: the illustrated journals, the magnetic tapes containing recordings of agony. She died in a psychiatric hospital 6 months later, whispering names of children in languages no one could identify. Finch was arrested along with 24 accomplices, including the highest political and ecclesiastical authorities in the region. During interrogations, the bishop developed neurological symptoms associated with the prolonged consumption of human nervous tissue, prion disease. His paranoia intensified into complete dementia, but his recorded confessions provided maps to mass graves containing the remains of more than 200 victims. "They tell me where to find more pure flesh." But his final revelations suggested the network of sacred cannibalism extended far beyond Havenwood. The trial against Finch's accomplices dragged on for years. Witnesses died under suspicious circumstances. Key evidence vanished. Only 3 of the 24 arrested were ever convicted. The rest bought their freedom. Mary Ann Higgins took her own life 6 months later. Locals report that the smell of frankincense still seeps from its ruins on new moon nights. The crypts were sealed with concrete, but construction workers refused to finish the job after hearing children's voices crying for help from the depths. The case files were classified as top secret. The confession tapes were supposedly destroyed in an accidental fire, but partial copies circulate on the black market. In them, Finch describes every technique with chilling detail, as the screams of his victims, including Laura Morgan, can be heard in the background. The cracked bell of St. Bartholomew's has been silent since 1987. The cracks spread each year, as if the metal cannot bear the weight of the horrors it witnessed. The charred archives still hold documents no authority wants you to read. Confessions that reveal the depths of evil when it cloaks itself in holiness. How many other bishops like Finch are operating right now, protected by blessed vestments? How many more children will disappear before someone has the courage to open the crypts that remain sealed in other old churches? The silver crucifix Finch wore was never found. Some suspect it hangs from the neck of his successor, waiting to restart the most sinister sacrament in history. If everyone in town knew that children disappeared every new moon Wednesday for 30 years, why did no one ever lock the doors of St. Bartholomew's? Write the exact time and the city you're watching this completely true story from in the comments right now.